extraordinaire, the gemologist.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Geomologist Presents. We've been delayed because of scheduling conflicts, but today we're going to continue our ongoing series to look at and examine, critique, review the top 10 Western movies according to IMDb. And with me today to do that, before I tell you the name of the movie we're going to review, although maybe you can tell by looking behind me. But before we do that, I'm going to introduce my co-host, Amy,
Hello.
and our guest. I think we're going to have a guest these last three that we do. We're going to have a guest with us to review the movie. Makes it more interesting and exciting. And we have BJ Boyd. Hello.
Hello. Good to
Yep.
be here.
Yeah. I guess he's a little delayed up there. And no, you can hear me okay, right?
I can hear you okay. Yeah, I can hear me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. Anyway, today's movie we're going to review is Dances with Wolves, and this is a 1990 American epic Western starring, directed, and produced by Kevin Costner. It's his directional debut, actually, and I did not know this, but it is a film adaptation of the 1988 novel Dances with Wolves by Michael Blake. So I don't know if have you read that book, BJ?
No, I haven't read the book.
I didn't even know it was a book.
In fact, I hadn't watched the movie in a long time until you asked me to
What's that?
to
To watch this movie?
I hadn't even watched the movie in a long time until you asked me to join and do the review. So
Yeah. We had just rewatched it as
forgotten a
well.
lot about it till I watched it last week.
And the novel and the movie tells the story of Union Army Lieutenant John Dunbar, which Costner plays. He travels to the American frontier and meets with a group of Lakota. But before we get into the movie,
I hear the phone ringing.
yes, we have a call-in. And that call-in is from M.W. Lewis of the World of M.W. Lewis. And he has some comments on the comments that Amy made from the last couple movies. And that was Once Upon a Time in the West and then Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which we didn't like one, but really liked the other. So here's the call.
Hey, Carl and Amy, it's M.W. Lewis here. I want to call and comment on your last two Western reviews. And Amy, I heard Joe Richter's call in where he said you shouldn't apologize for not liking a movie. And I agree, we shouldn't, right? We should never apologize if we don't like a movie. It's up to us. But I know why you apologize, and you kind of explained it because it is on that list. And it's so, in other words, it's supposed to be a great movie because it's on that list. And really, I think when I watch that movie, I want to like it. And of course, here I am talking about the movie. Let me see. I gotta look real fast. Once Upon a Time in the West. I didn't want to mess up the title there, so I pulled up in your podcast real fast. But anyway, it's got such a great cast, and it is Sergio Leone, the spaghetti western guy, who's amazing, and the movie just doesn't work. It's not that good, and it is a little boring, and it's just jointed, and it's hard. It's just not a good movie, unfortunately. But Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, that is a good movie. That's a 1969 movie, and I appreciated your review of it. And Carl did pose a question at the end of the episode, which I'm going to answer. So I looked up this LA Times article, which I think maybe Carl was referring to when he mentioned the study and the DNA testing and all that. It's inconclusive. I would say in all likelihood they probably got killed by law enforcement down in South America. Whether it was that actual shootout or not, I don't know. There's all kinds of crazy rumors. It's fun to think about that stuff, but I just don't know enough about it. I do know the movie though, and I like the movie a lot. And you can't go wrong with Robert Redford and Paul Newman, two great actors, and they were only in a few movies together, but they're really good together. And just like the Once Upon a Time in the West, you want to like a movie when it has a great cast. And unlike Once Upon a Time in the West, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, it delivers. So I appreciate the reviews, and I'm looking forward to your next ones.
All right. Thank you, MW. Have you seen those movies recently, BJ? And then I'll get Amy's thoughts on this.
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So have you ever seen Once Upon a Time in the West?
MW didn't he didn't give you his he has his rating scale of how
Oh,
prone
yeah.
is he. The better a movie is, the more he will like sit still and watch it without having to get up and
Yeah,
move
right,
around.
right. So
He
I guess
didn't rate
based on that
movies on his
context,
scale.
yeah, based on what he said, I would maybe assume he'll have to call in and tell us that for Once Upon a Time in the West, he kind of
I
got up
think
and
that's
walked
a
around.
big fat 0. I think he is like out the door getting dinner while the movie's playing. There's
Yeah.
no prone at all there.
Yeah, and for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, it might be a full-on prone movie.
It's full on prone, 4 or 5 buckets of Paul Newman popcorn.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he has his own popcorn, doesn't he?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did.
Have you seen Butch
You got it.
Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
I have not.
Yeah, that's a good
I need
movie.
to.
I
I have
recommend
this
it.
list of classic movies I've never bothered to watch that I need to go watch.
Right.
The
Yeah.
best line in that movie is you don't rob the people coming up the mountain. You rob them when they're coming down the mountain when they have
Yeah.
the money.
Yeah.
Morons.
Morons. Yeah, it's got a lot of quotable quotes from that movie. So again, thank you for that call, MW. And
We always love your calls, MW.
we try our best. And there you go, Amy. Another I guess another support for you not liking a movie. You don't have to like every movie, even though these are supposed to be, like I said, the top rated movies on IMDb, and they have really good ratings on Rotten Tomatoes as well. Well, anyway, so this movie, it was actually a box office hit. It made $424 million worldwide. So that was the fourth highest grossing film in 1990. And the highest grossing I cannot find words today, the highest grossing film for Orion Pictures. This is crazy to me. Because we've had some pictures that I thought were really good and never nominated for anything. And this film, I don't know. I'm kind of, I guess my feeling is ambivalence, actually. I watched it again recently, Amy and I did. But the film was nominated for 12 awards at the 63rd Academy Awards, and it won 7, including Best Picture, Best Director for Kevin Costner, Best Adapted Screenplay, Film Editing, Cinematography, Original Score, and Sound Mixing. So yeah, not for the acting though. Interestingly, not for the acting.
That's
yeah,
because the best actor were the 2 wolves.
Yeah, maybe. What's interesting, so it is only a bit of trivia on awards. It was only one of 4 westerns to win the Oscar for Best Picture. The others were Cimarron from 1931, but I've heard that has not aged well. Unforgiven, which is actually the movie we're going to look at next, and then No Country for Old Men, which I really liked. That's kind of a modern western to me, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an actual western. That was
Good movie though.
It's a good movie.
Yeah.
It's based on one of Cormac McCarthy, right? One of his books. So anyway, before we get into the plot, the cast, right? So
I was gonna say, it's impressive for Kevin Costner to win an Oscar for Best Director on his first go.
Yeah.
But my understanding, I don't know, this may be apocryphal, it kind of went to his head and he became very difficult to work with for several years after that. He had people that he had worked well with and that were friends that kind of walked out on him when they were doing Waterworld and wouldn't work with him for a little while after that.
Oh, really? Yeah, I don't
became control freak during production and on set.
Yeah, and I don't even know if he had something. I mean, were those movies that came after? So I'm thinking was Robin Hood before or after this? I don't know. But it was like the 1990s were like Kevin Costner, right? So I mean, he had
I think Robin Hood was before this one.
Maybe. What about the Field of Dreams? That was a good movie.
Don't know.
Have to look,
well, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was 1991.
So that's after.
Okay.
That's after.
So I guess it was after.
And Field of Dreams was 1989, so it was before.
Yeah.
But Waterworld was where he started, he was in charge and butted heads with his,
Yeah.
you know, either the
No.
producer or the director, member. And
Yeah,
then,
he actually Costner's had many baseball themed movies: Chasing Dreams, Bull Durham, Field of Dreams, For the Love of the Game, and The Upside of Anger. So he lives in Austin.
and a lot of
He
westerns
probably
too.
hangs out.
This one's
What's that?
a lot of westerns too.
Yeah.
At least now, I mean, if you count like Yellowstone and other stuff.
Oh, right. Yeah,
But
Yellowstone.
he's got a new one coming out. I think next year. I think it came. It's like a two-parter. This big sweeping epic story of kind of, you know, Western movement. Kind of
Oh,
towards the
right,
end of
right. Like it's not. I want to say it was Once Upon a Time in America, or I don't know if it's something it's called
something like
Horizon,
that.
an
Yeah.
American Saga. That's what it's going to be called. It's called
Yeah.
Horizon, and he is Superman's foster father
Mhm.
in Zack Snyder's Justice League
Yeah.
as Jonathan Kent out in that DC. I would say DCU in the DC movies. So Superman's foster father. That's why Clark Kent / Superman is such a good person, right? Because of Kevin Costner playing Jonathan Kent.
Anyone from this
Oh,
part of the
man.
country knows that they didn't do their research when they all go get away from a tornado underneath an underpass. That you don't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
there you
nobody
go.
from Kansas would do that.
That's
They
crazy.
would know better.
Don't you just run into the house and hope that it gets taken to Oz or something? Right.
Long
So
movie.
anyway, yeah. So he's directed and produced a lot of things. The Postman he directed and produced,
Yeah.
which I've never seen. Open Range, another Western, directed and produced. Open Range is a good movie, I think. So they're not all bad. They're not all. Yeah.
I like
Crazy.
Waterworld.
Daryl's-
It didn't do well and got a lot of criticism, but I liked Waterworld. I enjoyed
Yeah.
it.
He produced that one. Bodyguard. He was in the Bodyguard with what's
Whitney
that?
Houston.
Whitney Houston. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Since you're into trivia questions, did you know that Kevin Costner's daughter, Annie Costner, who was 6 at the time, played Stands with a Fist?
no. Oh, the young stands with the fist, right?
Oh yeah,
The-
when she
the
was
young.
the scene where she's gets
Yeah.
But
her
he
family gets
he
killed.
told her to look over her right shoulder, but she didn't remember which one was her right shoulder and her left, so she just looked both ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
that was cute.
So other than Costner, who is the star of the show, the director, etc., gets the most face time, of course. You have Mary McDonnell, who is stands with Fist, Christine Gunther, and then you have Graham Greene as Kicking Bird. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Lakota name for them. Rodney Grant as Wind in His Hair, Floyd Westerman as Chief Ten Bears, etc. I mean, there's a lot of people that you see in a lot of play Native Americans in a lot of movies. Yeah, including I did see what's that? He's in like every single Native American movie where he's in
Well, you get West Studi.
West Studi, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a toughest Pawnee, I guess not given a name, but he was there as one of the.
Yeah.
So.
Carl, you forgot the best actors in the movie.
Oh, the animals.
Buck and Teddy, they both played Two Socks.
That's the wolf that is in there.
Wolves.
I think
And then after filming, they got to retire to an animal sanctuary called Working Wildlife.
Yeah, the horse, the horse that played Cisco was pretty amazing too.
He should have gotten support.
Yeah. So yeah.
The other back to the humans, he's Tantu Cardinal, who's sort of like the ubiquitous. If you need a native woman,
Yeah,
for the 80s and 90s, like
yeah, that's true.
those roles went to her. She's one of the only consistently working female
During that time,
native actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was Tom Everett was Sergeant Pepper. That was a interesting one. You see Tom Everett here and there against Sergeant Pepper's a weird name because I guess he has a band called the Lonely Hearts Club.
Yeah.
But so I think so that's a cast. Costner has won quite a few awards, like we said. I don't know if anyone else has won awards from that group.
Studi has got an Oscar, but it was a lifetime achievement when it wasn't for a specific role. A couple of years ago, they gave him a sort of just one of the lifetime achievement.
Yeah.
awards.
Yeah. So, oh, there was a list of Costner's honors. Oh, here, no, it's not that, not a big list. Oh, list of awards and nominations. Here we go. Yeah, for Best Picture and Best Director, I guess I give him credit. He was nominated for actor, but yeah, he hasn't won.
Was he nominated for the stunts that he did? Because you know he shot the guns and rode the horse himself
Oh wow.
without the reins.
Oh, he's got an Emmy too. That's crazy. That was a good. I thought Hatfields and McCoy was actually pretty good.
It was pretty good.
With Dennis Quaid was in that too, but he was Hatfields and McCoy outstanding lead actor in a miniseries. He has some Golden Globes as well. And for Yellowstone, he's won Best Actor for Yellowstone at a Golden Globe. No Tonys or Grammys. I guess he's not a singer, so he doesn't have the, you know, the what's it called? I don't know, the War 4. I don't know what they're called. But
I don't know. I guess we could count our lucky stars for that.
yeah,
Haha, pun intended. That's my dad joke for the day.
right. So yeah, I don't know how much we'll get into the plot, but
EGOT,
what
Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony, the EGOTs.
EGOTs, yeah, Emmy, Grammy, yeah,
All four of them.
yeah, yeah. So that's like I think it's a very
You
small
got to get
club.
on Broadway to get those.
Yeah, yeah. So
He still has time.
yeah.
We're gonna throw down the gauntlet that Kevin Costner needs to get onto Broadway.
Mhm. Maybe, I don't know.
I'd go see it.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, it's a pretty short list. Oh, it's a quite a large list actually of people or EGOTs. Yeah. The latest one being Sir Elton John. If you could
That's one
believe.
I wouldn't have expected to be on that list.
Yeah. He's won all. Yeah. That's great. So I know one that's I thought is really cool. One of the first ones is Rita Moreno, who completed her EGOT in 1997. Yeah, so that's pretty neat. So anyway, that's a tangent that we didn't need to go on, but I'll keep that list
Yeah.
up because you never know. So something I didn't remember about this movie.
Is the Bison that was running on the field and would do anything for double stuffed Oreos?
No.
No.
Yeah, that was a scene. Well, that was a scene in the movie. You know, that
Mhm.
I think when the Bison was charging Smiles a lot.
Yes.
So I mean that didn't happen.
Mhm.
Yeah, they cut that together, however they do movie magic. But they had the Buffalo Charge to like a pile of Oreos or something like that.
They were his favorite snack. Again, he should have
This
gotten
this
at
movie,
least a nomination.
yeah, I think this movie is clearly not seen as commonly as it used to have by the sheer number of tourists at Yellowstone every year that try to pet buffalo
Right. Oh
and,
yeah.
and get
There's like a whole
knocked around and
series of
charged.
Turons
Yeah,
of Yellowstone. There's a whole series on that.
yeah.
But yeah,
you get lots of examples in this movie of how powerful the bison are, and
yeah, that's really cool.
how dangerous it can be to try to get down on foot with them.
Mhm.
Mhm.
One thing I think the movie did was really bring home the point that non-Native Americans really killed resources for the Native Americans. And I mean, they
Yeah.
took the skin off the buffalo and then left them to rot. That is like a slap in the face.
Yeah.
Just
And this is early. This scene where you're depicting here, these are probably buffalo hunters who are just they want the hides and the tongues, maybe
Yeah.
sometimes the horns for commerce. Later, towards the ends, into the Plains Wars, which would be after this, much later after this.
Yeah, this is like right after the Civil
War.
War.
There was a policy of slaughtering buffalo herd to try to impoverish the Lakota and other Plains tribes so that they wouldn't. That was a source of food and supplies that would make them then have to, settle down, go to the reservation,
Right. Depend
as
on the
long as they have the herds, they can
yeah.
move around and survive without any aid or kind of important relationship with outsiders.
Yeah. Yeah, that comes. I think overall, I don't know, like I was sharing earlier, I'm kind of ambivalent towards this movie. I know when I was watching it, I didn't even remember the Civil War part where Dunbar, like by happenstance, becomes a hero, right? He's about to lose his. The opening scene is pretty bloody and gory. Yeah, I was surprised with the amount of gore also in this movie,
Mhm.
but I didn't remember that. But they're about to they almost amputate his foot, but then he's all messed up, and I guess he's very uh not, I don't know if it's disheartened, disillusioned is probably the best word, by the Civil War. He's on the Union side, and they're on in some battle in Tennessee, and uh and then he charges the Confederate lines, trying to commit suicide.
He's
But they
basically,
all,
trying to commit suicide so he doesn't get his leg amputated.
yeah, and then it becomes a distraction, and the Union takes advantage, and he becomes like the hero, and he gets a medal, and he gets to go wherever he wants to. So he wants to go see the frontier. So it is like right, it's like during the Civil War, basically, is when he goes
Yeah,
out.
I think this movie, it's set before, right, like maybe at the end or right after the Civil War. By the time he gets there, it's
Mhm.
before people started to move out onto the plains.
Yeah,
But systematically, I think they presage what's about to happen when the settlers and the cavalry start to come out in more numbers, and they keep asking him what's going to happen, or are more of you coming? And he kind of knows it, but he can't bring himself to. He can tell what's going to happen. He's trying to work up the courage or the gumption to be honest with them and about what's probably about to happen.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's very, and I thought that I feel like the stuff at Fort Sedgwick was sort of superfluous. So he meets that guy, a Major Fambro, who's kind of a little messed up.
Yeah,
Maybe also disillusioned by the Warrens' assignment. He signs them to all the way to the furthest reaches of the jurisdiction.
Do
Um,
you think he
yeah.
might have been doing
no,
that to
he
try and
goes to
keep
Fort
him
Hayes,
safe?
and they go to Fort Hayes. Sorry, Fort Hayes is where he meets Fambro, and then they send him to Fort
Yep.
Sedgwick. Which what was that, Amy?
No, I'm saying, don't you think he sent him out that far, possibly to just keep him safe?
I don't know.
I
Or,
think he was crazy. I think the idea was that the officer that sent him out there was insane,
yeah,
because then he
yeah.
kills himself as Dunbar is leaving the camp, and then nobody is aware that he's been sent out there. So when the an actual regiment arrives, they don't expect him to be there. Of course, when they find him, they immediately label him a traitor
Right.
when he tells tells him who he is. But
Mhm.
Yeah, because a meal provisioner who was hard for me to understand. That person was played by, who played Timmons? Because I've seen him, uh, Robert Pastorelli. Oh,
yeah,
you know you've seen Robert
for
Pastorelli on
Murphy
the TV.
Brown,
Yeah, from Murphy Brown, right? But
he's in a really funny movie. I don't think it got a lot of wide meaning with Tom Selleck, called Folks,
yeah.
and it's Tom Selleck, and I think it might have been Don Amici, but Tom Selleck. His dad has Alzheimer's, and he's got to bring his dad home to live with him, and
Oh,
it's a lot of
folks, who?
humorous, ridiculous situations caused by it. So there's a lot of sort of absurd kind of comedy, but it also has a real heartwarming kind of
Yeah,
you know thing about what it's like to have to care for a parent. But Robert Pastorelli plays kind of a secondary character, has some of the best one-liners
yeah.
in the
Unfortunately, he passed away
yeah.
Mhm.
in 2004 at the young age of 49.
Wow,
So
that is young.
yeah, I did not know that. But he's the only other person who knows that Dunbar goes out there, and then
Yeah.
he's like, also he's killed by, I guess, some Pawnee, right?
Pawnee.
So yeah.
Mhm. Well,
So
Carter,
yeah, so you're right. No one knows that he go ahead.
let me ask you this. So every Western that we've watched off this list so far, there's like a resounding theme to it. So greed or, self-righteousness. Do you think this one might have been centered around social injustice or how we use others to try and promote ourselves?
I mean, how do you mean?
Well, I mean, so the Indians were already on the land. and he comes and he's trying to use their knowledge to survive, and they're trying to get information from him. So they're each using each other. But then as it goes on and he builds these relationships, then the social injustice comes into the fact that he knows he's going to end up betraying them, or at least his people are. And I mean, at what point in time do you stand up for somebody being wronged and say this isn't right?
Yeah, I mean, he does in the end try to like save them, save the Lakota tribe that he interacts with, right? By sending him,
Yeah.
by warning them or sending them away, and that's why he gets in trouble, right? So I think there's a lot of like after he gets there, to me it gets really slow. I mean, it's very slow in the middle where he's trying to, maybe they could have. I mean, that time passes. Maybe they could have montaged that a little better, but there's this like, oh, we can't communicate. How do we communicate? And they have Mary McDonald's character come in, and she remembers that because she was I guess
She was a settler's daughter.
settler's daughter that was
Yeah.
raised by the Lakota.
Raised
The
by
Lakota
the
took her.
tribe.
Yeah.
And
So
she's loosely based on oh, what's the woman's name? Quanah Parker, who was a important figure in Native history. His mother was white, and she had been taken in as a child and raised among
the Comanche. Yeah.
the Comanche, and then married a Comanche man, and then Quanah Parker became an important figure in terms of speaking about indigenous rights and the relationships between indigenous governments and the federal government and state governments and things like that. So, in fact, the dorm I lived in as a freshman in college is named after Quanah Parker.
Oh wow.
State.
Well, I have a question for you then, BJ.
Mhm.
When I read history, it seems like the children of the settlers that were quote unquote taken by Indian tribes never wanted to go back to their lives again. They said that they felt more in a community and everything in the tribes. Is that how you see it too?
I'd have to know each individual child. I mean, and read more of those accounts. I can see where some might want to stay, particularly if they're particularly young, and at some point that becomes the only
They don't remember anything else, right?
family you really know. You may have some very distant memory, or you may just know because obviously you don't look like everybody else, and people remind you.
Yeah.
But I think there is and it varies from tribe to tribe and culture to culture. But captive taking, and with a lot of native cultures, the captives eventually do just become part of the community, and they become a part of someone's family. Again, it varies. That's not universal or ubiquitous, but that is often, captives are taken during war. They're taken during raids. They're taken during stuff, and they that's not always means it's polite or it's well done. I mean, again, it varies from tribe to tribe, and they're treated differently. And girls may be forced to marry in some of the tribes an older man and become a wife without really understanding what's going on. But sometimes not. It varies. But again, on some level, if that's all you've ever known, and these are your people, and now they take care of you, you take care of them, you all work together, then I can see that. Particularly the younger you are.
Yeah.
But I think this movie does try to show what kind of internally what Lakota culture is like or was like. Sort of before a lot of extended contact and acculturation and this is sort of the type of culture that Lakota people today are trying to hold on to and reclaim and continue to try to preserve. And not that the Lakota didn't make war on other tribes or have their own internal politics and struggles, but I think the movie is trying to show the way Lakota people approach being members of a tribe, being members of a community, and you see that same in his journal when he starts comparing and contrasting. Once he really starts to spend a lot of time with them, sort of the differences in sort of approach to indigenous cultures tend to be much more communal and
Right.
it's not that there aren't leaders or elders or people who are in charge, but there's not a real that hierarchy is not strict, and there's not several layers to it.
Yeah.
And I think they show that there's some interesting. I think one thing that stood out to me is the first time that I had not really noticed till I rewatched this time. The first time that they're in, the men come together in a council to talk about, hey, there's a white man over at the old fort. What's he doing? And Wind in the Hair wants to go confront him. Can't remember if he says he wants to kill him or if he just certainly wants to go out there and solve the problem of the violence.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Kicking Bird doesn't want to. He wants to just go learn. And they're the leader of the group, Tin Bears.
Yeah.
First thing he says is just struck me as very, oh yeah, that's a very kind of I guess indigenous way of doing it. First thing he says is, okay, no man can tell another man what to do. And then, a couple minutes later, he tells Wind in the Hair exactly what he's going to do because he's an elder. But there's a paradox there that I think may seem strange to maybe kind of Western thinking, but if you're familiar with indigenous communities, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
There is a certain amount of individual liberty and freedom to just be who you are and do things the way you want to do them, and be a little different. But at the same time, there's this sort of real sense of togetherness, and eventually, at least when the community is functioning, the elders and the people who are wiser and know things, people tend to do what they get asked to do, even though they don't have to. But they tend to anyway. And it's not like there aren't going to be some sort of maybe informal kind of social ramifications of not listening to your elders or not following what the leaders say. Yeah. So he was saying, this younger guy, well, you can do that if you want to. We can't really stop you. We'd rather you not. And here's why. And then of course, when Wind in the Hair says, okay, fine, you guys go do that, then Tin Bears tells him, well, actually, no, you're going to do it.
Oh, right. Yeah. Because he was the one.
You're going to go with Kicking Bird and get information for us.
Yeah. Learn some wisdom in your Wind in his Hair, right? So.
And you see that, Wind in his Hair he's still a relatively young man.
Yeah, he's a young warrior, right?
And the older men are a little more patient and curious.
Right. And Dunbar comes to respect the Lakota and their culture. He's even accepted to their tribe when he helps with the hunt. And I guess he, in a way, joins the tribe. He even eventually gets permission to marry Stands with Fist. He helps them not just with the buffalo hunt, but against some of the Pawnee that are encroaching onto the land, being pushed, of course, by settlers in that direction. So I guess this is maybe this is about the time where we should talk about the reception and also contrast the criticism that the movie had received, right? So it was very popular. And did really well in the US and Canada and worldwide. And it made a lasting impact, I guess, on images of Native Americans, probably to the audience. And members of the Lakota tribe even held a ceremony to honor Kevin Costner, right? So, and that was Floyd Westerman, who was Chief Ten Bears, I guess. Chief Ten Bears is he Lakota? I think he's Lakota, right? So, and then Lakota elder Albert Whitehat served as a cultural advisor too. So, and then they even had at the Academy Awards. I mean, unlike the infamous substitute for Marlon Brando back at Apocalypse Now, right? This time it was more like an invite. We invite you to come and share this award, right? So,
and so there's a lot of buzz this year about Killers of the Flower Moon and how Martin Scorsese went out of his way to work with the Osage Nation, to hire Osage people as much as could be possible on set, to hire actual indigenous actors to play all the people. I think he probably did embrace that a little more readily. And I don't know if he did by choice or just because he could at this point. I don't know if you could argue that Dances with Wolves helped further that sort of mindset of how you would actually make it a movie about Native Americans. Is you go to whatever Native community you want to portray, and you work with that community to make sure that we're doing this as accurately as possible, that we're including you, so that we're portraying this correctly. And I think, we've talked about Dances or Killers of the Flower Moon, but I know they did the same thing with the last Predator movie.
Right.
Had
Prey, yeah, and Prey,
they had
right.
actual tribal members there, and one of the producers is a member of that tribe.
Yeah, and they had to
It
go
wasn't
deep
really
though, because they
critically
had to
well
go.
received, but Echo, they did the same thing with
Which
the
one?
Marvel series Echo. They
Yeah.
came to Oklahoma and worked with the Choctaw Nation to
Oh,
make sure they accurately portray contemporary
contemporary,
Choctaw,
yeah. For
people as
Prey,
they
they
are
had to
now.
go probably dig into the histories and stuff, and
Yeah.
like how was this tribe in
Mhm.
in the 18th century, because it's like 1700,
Yeah.
early 1700s, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So, I
crazy.
So
mean,
I think
I
you
would
see
say,
those.
sorry,
Yeah,
BJ.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say
I was
in the 1990s growing up, this is the first film I remember seeing them put a positive framework around American Indians and them not
Yeah.
being always the bad person. So maybe Kevin Costner's claim to fame is that he promoted getting in touch with those that were here before us.
Yeah,
And
perhaps they were always portrayed as the villain. Is that
Well, there
is
are
that
other.
accurate?
I mean, I think there are native characters prior to this that are
Uh-huh.
portrayed more positively, and I think a Little Big Man with Dustin
Oh,
Hoffman,
right.
tried to. But this is certainly the first one that's this big, where it's like
A Man Called Horse, I guess, also, right?
there are two white people on the screen, and everybody else
Mhm.
are natives, and they're all being played by natives, by native actors.
Yeah.
That's not something that had happened a lot before this, I think.
Right. And Last of the Mohicans also came out in 92, so
Yeah.
this movie predated that as well. So that's another one
Yeah.
that showed. Although that's,
Well,
hard to say about that one because it was written by James Fenimore Cooper, right? But
yeah, and so I think Last of the Mohicans, I think tries to portray that they're sort of heroic natives and villainous natives in that one, which is
yes.
good. I need to go back and look at it again through kind of my more experienced eyes now
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
back then. But with that, you're still getting James Fenimore Cooper's ideas of what natives
Right.
are.
Right.
Here, you're actually getting, even though it's I think a white person who wrote the book and white people who have made the movie, they've worked with the actual Lakota to make sure we're portraying you as you see yourselves or as you understand yourselves, not just as we think you are or we assume you are.
Yeah.
I know it's got the typical kind of criticism of being a white savior film.
Mm. Yeah, like
Uh,
Lawrence of the Plains, right? That's what.
yeah, and I think it's a valid point to make. It may be a valid criticism, but I don't know. I feel like we're just now getting to the point where we can make films about different cultures, different periods of history, different societies without having to have a white European proxy to
Right.
see the story through. I remember that, like The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise had a
Right.
similar
Similar.
criticism of that was a wonderful period piece to try to kind of look at what's happening at the end of the the end of the Edo period, or the last, as Japan opens itself back up to the West and the samurai class begin to die out. You could have told that story and you didn't necessarily need Tom Cruise in there as your eyes.
Yeah, and
I
in
think that's
contrast, Shogun is like the Blackstone is like lost through the whole thing. He doesn't do
yeah,
anything. Yeah,
yeah,
he's almost like an observer, like that's clueless for the most part, right? He's not the
yeah,
hero. He doesn't save anyone except try to save himself, and
yeah.
it's the actually I think really when it boils down to it,
But
well, yeah,
that's a common. I mean, you see that like Robin. Why do we need Robin in a Batman story? Well, he's supposed to be a proxy for the teenagers who were actually reading the comic books
oh, okay,
when
yeah,
he's first created. There was this idea. So that's why all the DC heroes wind up with these teenage sidekicks, is because the thought was by the writers is that the teenagers need a proxy by which to see the story
nice,
unfold with their eyes, instead of the adult hero, which I think is not true, but it is such a pervasive notion in storytelling that you need a a central character or a prominent character that is the eyes of the audience that they can relate to in ways they
Perhaps, yeah.
can't relate to everybody else. And I don't know that that's maybe or maybe not true, but I think that's where a lot of these white savior films come from when they're maybe coming from a trying to like, come from a good place. Is they really are trying to depict another culture and other people and give you a window into that world. And maybe you need somebody to do that. I don't know, but it does wind up perpetuating this in the end. He's the one who has to go. We don't know if he does because it just ends with him him leaving.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the setup is he's going to go try to inform anybody who'll listen about who these people are and what his experiences have been, so they can understand them and maybe live with them peacefully.
Yeah. But I think that unfortunately that backfires, and this is probably what after he becomes to kind of join the tribe, Dunbar, Kevin Costner's character, then the threat of the U.S. Army finally sends a detachment out to Fort Sedgwick, and they like kill every single animal. I don't know, all the heroic animals. They kill Cisco when they capture Dunbar, then they kill Two Socks when the wolf's trying to follow. The prison cart. I don't know. I don't like. I guess I don't like seeing animals killed.
I don't either. But
But-
isn't that in a way foreshadowing of what we did do to them?
No, I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, wolves.
Yeah. Oh, they're still an
endangered
issue with
because they're
wolves.
seen as sort of, not you got to clear the wolves out of there so they don't attack the live. Of course, that's not what they're doing there, but it kind of
presages. No, but it does presage that. Yeah, but actually, this is my killing wolf soapbox. I apologize, but the thing that kills livestock the most is disease anyway, and what a lot of times the evidence suggests that their livestock are actually killed by feral dogs or wolf dog hybrid packs, not actual wolves, but they kill the wolves anyway. And they showed amazingly in Yellowstone, not the show, but in like Yellowstone, looking at ecologically, that when they reintroduced the wolves, then that benefited the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, because they need an apex predator.
Right. You need an apex predator to get rid of the sick and old, deer and stuff like that, or elk, I guess in this case. But yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I mean,
modern livestock is insured. I mean, it's never a joy to lose a sheep or a cow or someone to a predator.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of family and friends who ranch related livestock. They probably disagree with me on this, and I sympathize with that. But for these big ranchers, kind of adjacent to Yellowstone, their animals are insured. They lose a couple a year.
Yeah.
It's not like the milk cow on the family farm.
Right.
We're going
it's
to
like these.
That's it. We can't survive. It's that. So
Yeah. And a lot of I think people just want to they throw wolves into like killing a big game animal, right? It's the apex predator. We got the gun. We're better. It's like killing. You don't need to kill lions, man. Why do you go to Africa to kill lions so you can pose there with the carcass? Same with a big wolf, I think. Anyway, so I guess they do put a bad light, I would say, in general of the Western. I would say the Western culture in this. The Civil War, the weirdness with the Civil War, the madness with with some of the soldiers, and then like we don't ask questions first and are peaceful. We just shoot first and ask questions later.
They assume he's an Indian, so they just shoot him.
Yeah,
that's how they accidentally kill his horse.
Yep.
And then once they realize he's white, they don't really believe what they won't let him tell his story as to how he got here and what's really been going on.
Right. They assume he's a traitor.
Yeah. And you see sort of, I think the lieutenant wants to hear his story and is trying to be civil. And he's even from the first scene with what's Spivey, the lieutenant has his number, is already kind of on him about, you could tell there's kind of been maybe history of misbehavior and
right
problems. And you really don't have any, there's really no, you kind of wish he would have taken longer to kill Spivey, so he would have suffered longer when it finally happens. He was such a awful person.
Careful, BJ. Carl already thought it was too long of a movie.
Yeah.
Well, it's one thing to sort of come out
Oh,
there
it's
and
almost
just
three.
sort
It's
of,
almost the movie's 3 hours and 1 minute, by the
but
way.
Spivey has the ability to just sort of help by saying, "Oh yeah, we found we found it. I have a journal. I found it here.
Yeah.
I can't read it, so I don't know what's in it, but give it to his lieutenant or the major."
Right.
But no, he keeps it for himself for toilet paper.
Yeah. 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 That's crazy. But I
Um,
mean, I guess if Dunbar's rescued, I guess, in a way we have a somewhat happy ending. He's
mhm.
rescued. He goes to the winter camp and decides to leave, so the soldiers don't track him down. He leaves with
Yeah.
stands with fist.
Mhm. And ultimately, he's just delaying the inevitable.
Right, right.
Mhm.
And there's even a commentary at the end of that, right, the epilogue text that it has. But I thought the coolest scene, and I remember, was when his and I'm getting all like not teary-eyed but emotional about when Winds with Hair, who was hostile initially,
Yeah.
calls Dunbar a friend. I think that's pretty
Can
cool.
you see? Because originally he says, he gives his name and he says, "I'm not afraid of you. Can you see I'm not afraid of you?" And at the
Right.
end,
Like he's like
yeah,
hostile to him, gonna,
yeah.
you
And then
know,
he's saying, can you see I'm your friend?"
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I thought that was pretty cool.
yeah. Um, we're talking about some of the criticisms, like the white savior trope is this obviously, I think, a valid criticism, but I think there's a little bit of context there about how do you get from films that require a white savior to films that require a white proxy for a majority white audience to films where we can explore other cultures on their own terms without needing that. And I think this it's unfortunate that you have to have that process, but I don't know if it isn't just kind of how it's had to go to get to where we
Right.
are and hopefully where we're going. But I know that's easy for me to say because I Cherokee, but I'm not full blood. I've lived a white lifestyle for a lot of aspects of my life. Some of these Lakota activists who are not as happy about how this went, that's because they've grown up on the reservation in abject poverty with all kinds of problems. So I can see the impatience there and why this is like, hey, this is not good enough, and it's insulting that you would think it is.
Yeah.
I certainly appreciate that point of view as well. I know, like, like you said, somebody, Russell Means, called it, this was like Lawrence of Arabia. This was Lawrence of the Plains, and um,
Yeah, the comment that Amy mentioned before we started too, right? Amy, about a woman was teaching the actors, and then it sounded in the Lakota language was as if women were talking, right? So
yeah.
Mhm.
So on
and
the
they were
flip side, they're obviously, again, they work with Lakota people and Lakota advisors, and a
right,
lot of their leaders showed the appreciation, and so you can't get one opinion and everybody to agree on anything, even within one tribe or one cultural group.
yeah. And even when you
Um,
try to do says like Apocalypto by Mel Gibson, right? That
yeah,
was all like in
yeah. And
the sort
again,
of
you can't get to I don't know if you can get to Apocalypto unless
right.
you first go through something like
But
this.
even that was highly criticized. So
Yeah,
you can't
yeah,
you can't win for
But,
losing sometimes, right?
yeah.
but Carl, isn't this indicative of the American way? We all agree never to agree.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's true.
But when push comes to shove, we all protect our family.
Yeah, no, that's very true.
Um,
Yeah, so I mean, I guess like I said, I shared what I felt of the film. It had some really good moments, was really long. It dragged in some places to me. So I feel like
one
ambivalent,
one thing that's interesting, and I don't know enough about the book, whether they're just adapting what's in the book
right?
or there's only two tribal groups portrayed here: the Lakota and the Pawnee.
Hmm.
The Lakota are cast as the good guys, and the Pawnees as the bad guys.
Right.
Because the only things we see of the Pawnee are we see their conflict with the Lakota, which that been going on for a long time. That's just life, I think, among the Plains tribes.
Yeah.
But they're also the ones who kill Stands with this family when she's a little girl, and she probably would have taken her captive or killed her, except she managed to run away
Mhm.
and is found by the Lakota out on the plain. And then it's the Pawnee that kill the mule train driver as he's headed back after taking Dunbar out there. And again, they're just sort of looking for something, and it's one of the they're one of their it's Wes Studi's character who just kills the guy without really just on principle. There is that history of conflict between the Lakota and the Pawnee, but I know some of the criticism has been you're kind of overly emphasizing one group as the good guys and the bad guys when it's not that
Yeah,
simple.
it's not that simple, right?
Also, at that period in time, the Pawnee were a much smaller group, and we're victim of raids from Lakota every bit much as they would make war on the Lakota. So,
Yeah.
but one thing that was very interesting, and I don't know if you caught this, in the scene where they repel, the actual warriors go out because they've heard the Pawnee are kind of in the area, so they actually send a war party out,
Mhm.
and they leave Dunbar. He wants to go with them, but they leave him there with the kids and the young men and some of the older men, along with the women and girls, to look after the encampment. And then a Pawnee war party comes in and attacks the camp, and they have to.
Fight them
That's where
off.
he goes back to the fort and gets the
Gets the
guns that he
guns,
brought
yeah.
out, and they drive him off. But you notice with Wes Studi, what happens is they capture him in the river and they've got him surrounded, and it just shows it for a minute. But you can see all of them running up and hitting him with a stick and then backing off, and they're counting coup,
Yeah.
which is really kind of, I don't know how many people who watch this sort of understand that tradition of it's considered to be a very brave thing to strike an enemy a non-lethal blow with a stick
Mhm.
before you and a lot of the context isn't coming across in this, and we don't have time to go into it, but that's an important,
Right.
particularly for young warriors, the first time you got to count coup on an enemy, which means he wasn't dead. You know, hit him with the stick before you finish him off. How many times can you do that? Things like that. So, but
Yeah.
it was interesting. They worked that in there. It was I don't know how many people would have caught that that's actually what was going on. Why they didn't just shoot him? Why they surrounded him, were screaming at him and kind of moving in and out. It
Yeah.
was partially that.
So what did you guys think of the movie? I guess Amy, what did you think? And then BJ, what did you think? And then we can get into, would you play a scenario like this as a game? And if you would, what game would you use? But first, like I said, I was ambivalent towards the movie.
Well, personally, I liked it. I liked it when I saw it in 1990, and I liked it when we rewatched it because I think it was the first time my eyes were open to the fact that it was okay to like the American Indians instead of seeing them as quote unquote traitors, which is kind of how I felt other movies were. And I felt a lot more emotion in my heart as far as look what we did to these people. And for lack of a better term, shame over it. And, I just felt like, I know you didn't like the movie, Carl, but I really felt as though they did a good job at that time of promoting, why don't you learn about a culture before you diss it? That's how I feel about it. But I would give it a 9 out of 10.
Hmm.
Maybe it was a touch long, but I mean, the cinematography was really good. And I love the costuming. I can't speak whether or not they did well with the with the Native American language because I don't speak any of it. And as far as the gaming system I would use in BJ's honor, I would say, why couldn't you do something like this with Coyote and Crow?
Yeah. BJ?
I like this movie, warts and all. I think I've already kind of given the perspective of if you were going to make this story now, there would probably be some ways you would do it differently based on where we are as a society. But
Right.
I maybe can understand why in 1990 this was and Amy, the fact that you had that reaction and so many people did says it partially accomplished its mission. It was to highlight some things that we sort of gloss over in history or that we minimize. particularly depending on what part of the country you grow up in and where you go to school and things like that. So I think they did what they said to do there and tried to do it in the most respectful, authentic way possible. But I think if we were to make it now, it'd probably even a little more, you know, from the eyes of, you know, maybe you start off with just the Lakota, and then they
Right.
discover this white guy, and
Right.
don't start with his story, but you start with their story, and then
Mm-hmm. Go
what's
from
that guy
there.
doing over there, and you know,
Yeah, you could definitely have more
but I still think,
indigenous actors and maybe even more indigenous, maybe
huh?
more Lakota actors nowadays. Right. I think
Mhm.
that's what would be instead of finding like
I
the
think with the language, I don't know he, yeah, sorry.
no, go
I
ahead.
think with the language issue, I don't know how you would help that. I mean, again, now they probably would because we have more resources, but when you can hire one Lakota speaker to teach all your actors who don't speak Lakota how to just get through the dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
getting the nuances of masculine and feminine, you know, versions of the dialect down. Um, so I also think it's funny that Russell Means would be the person who criticized that and then would go on to star in Pocahontas and defend his role in playing Powhatan in Pocahontas, Disney's Pocahontas, when that is chock full of far more cultural inaccuracies
Yeah.
and
Oh,
historical inaccuracies
Right. Right. Oh well.
about, you know, Pocahontas basically being a child bride to a British
Yeah.
that.
aristocrat.
Oh yeah.
Um, so
Well, you got to make a living.
yeah, you got to make a living. And I say that knowing Russell Means has been very important to the American Indian movement and social criticism about Indian policy and so don't mean to disrespect Russell Means, but it's kind of funny that
Hmm.
even he had a few like, what, wait a minute, isn't this the kind of thing you usually criticize?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, he was Uncas in Last of the Mohicans, right? So
yeah.
so
Um, and I always like to see Wes Studi. This was early in his career. Um,
mhm.
you know,
No, Russell Means with Chingachgook, sorry.
yeah.
They had Eric
Uh,
Schweg who
so yeah, I would still give this a high rating as a movie. You know, like
mhm.
probably an 8 or 9 out of 10. Uh,
Oh wow.
no, but I think you have to watch it with a critical eye and understand it as what it is as filmmaking. It's as an entertaining story and a good film, but also kind of the historical importance in terms of
Hmm.
U.S. history, but in historical importance in terms of cinema and the portrayal of American Indians in cinema. Um, so it's a historically important film.
Right.
uh,
That's true.
for a number of reasons, in addition to just whether it's an entertaining or well-made film, which I think it is.
Well, it's curious, actually, just as another point of trivia, is that there was actually a sequel that Michael Blake wrote called The Holy Road, which is like 11 years later, and it follows Dunbar and his wife stands with a fist and their journey. So interesting.
Yeah.
It's called so you could look that up, The Holy Road.
Yeah. I mean,
So anyway,
I can't speak for you guys, but I know I grew up near Chicago in Illinois, and it's obviously Illinois had Native Americans, and it's very ingrained in our culture there, and we don't pronounce the S. But when the movie came out, we still had drive-throughs. You know, you could drive
oh
in
yeah, wow,
movies. And as a group, our high school and middle schools and elementary schools would take field trips there to watch the movie, which maybe that's the reason why it sticks with me a little bit more. But they
Mhm.
used it as a teaching opportunity, and I thought it
wow,
was pretty cool.
wow. Yeah, I guess BJ didn't say what game system you would use.
Oh, so it'd be interesting to try to use Coyote and Crow as it is, because you know Coyote and Control posits a North America that has never had contact with Europe.
Right.
Hmm.
Um, so you could probably work up something of I think they're supposed to be releasing later this year another source book about another region of the continent.
Hmm.
So you could loosely use this story as maybe a way to portray early contact between, you know,
Yeah,
two
because it
groups.
is it is like a post-apocalyptic,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That nations are just starting to contact each other, which is pretty interesting. I think for me, like my go-to for Westerns is probably like Deadlands, even though it's like
Yeah.
fictitious, and I just like the sometimes pulp over the top heroicness, and I know that because it's an alternate history also, like the indigenous peoples have like nations, right?
Mm.
They have their own pretty powerful nations, relatively speaking. So,
Yeah.
so I think that that'd be pretty cool to do. We could do something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I mean,
Of course, the
it's
question
like
is,
it sounds like a fish out of water type of story, right? You could
do
do,
you,
right?
do you do you want to use the concept and put it in a science fiction or fantasy setting, or do
Yeah,
you
it's like
really
a
gonna
fish out of
go
water,
the
right?
there's no real magic or mysticism or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then you
fantasy
could use
in Dances with Wolves, which you
right.
know you might be able to use a little more mundane,
Mhm.
Well,
any
what
number
about
of
the Mutant Zero? Like with The Walking Dead and those, would that work?
Well, there is I mean, you could probably use like a Mutant Year Zero engine type of system. There's actually like a World War II um, version of that where, there's no magic or weirdness, right? So you could use that sort of engine, and that makes it, I think the Free League stuff is lethal enough that, you really don't want to get into fights in that if you can help it. And that's the general,
Well,
Yeah.
we learned that in T2K.
yeah,
If you
Savage
can-
Worlds would be more heroic, right? So,
Yeah, I would think something that's designed to do drama and heroic fiction as opposed to mudcore life and death,
yeah.
you know, cosmic horror. Life is
Right, but you could
cheap
use
and
you could use
meaningless
Call
kind
of
of.
Cthulhu, but just drop the cosmic horror,
Yeah.
just use
What
BRP percentile dice.
you're talking about the theme of this movie. I think there's a vibrance to this movie that talks about shows sort of a way of life that is, at least as portrayed in the movie, very vibrant and healthy and uplifting.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's not what most role playing games are meant to simulate. They're meant to simulate a very dangerous, tragic, violent world.
Yeah. Well, there is some of that in here, though. I mean, there is conflict, right? So,
Yeah, I think something like Fate, you could do this,
mhm.
or really any kind of your more general rule systems that are sort of not really for one genre that can be adapted to different. Because in the end, it's a Western. There are plenty of Western games that
Yeah.
have
Could you like
unique rules
hero
for
with the Western hero, just grounded in like reality?
Mhm.
So you could use GURPS, just
Yeah,
good GURPS Western
I know
references as
Jason is
well.
going to tell us to use Boot Hill if
Yeah,
Oh,
he,
I thought you were going to say aces and eights.
or he
Right.
might say he's in the name.
Yeah.
Jason will have to weigh in on that and tell us.
Yep. Well, yeah, I think any last thoughts on this movie? I think we've talked about it quite a bit.
Well, the only
And
thing that
I will try to
I'll
give it.
point out, Carl, is that in the beginning of the movie, the Civil War scenes, it was dark and muddy and kind of hazy, and then he's going off to get his new orders, and it's light and airy, and then it's kind of dark and dusty when he's heading off, and his commanding officer shoots himself, and then it got a little bit lighter and airier as he started bonding with the tribe, and then it got a little dark towards the end, and I liked the way they utilized the light with that. Not quite like Sergio, but
Yeah.
I did
Again,
like
if we made this movie today, we would have to use a sepia tone for the entire.
Oh, really? You think so? Yeah.
the whole time, the whole thing.
I wish they would drop that. I wish filmmakers would drop the tinting of the entire.
Well, it did win best cinematography. So, whoever did that did a great job of the cinematography stuff. So, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, maybe I will give it another chance. We'll see. I don't know. Sometimes I yell at the TV and I say, or when I'm watching a movie on TV, I go, "Why are you? Why are you doing it? Why are you doing that? Whatever." But
Because there's no drama. If they just did what made sense,
yeah, that's
everything
true.
worked out, there's no drama. There's no tension.
Yeah, well, yeah, like especially like at the end, like what's the motivation for Spivey not to give the journal, like which will make everything happy, and good. Why has he got to be that way, or
Showing the greed.
yeah,
You just have to watch it with different eyes.
yeah. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much, BJ, for joining us. I hope you've had fun talking about Dances
Yeah.
with Wolves.
Yeah.
And yeah, appreciate people calling in. Tell us what you think. We are probably a little more political than we have been in the past. We're looking at a movie, and I'm glad BJ could join us to give us to add that in and give us that perspective, right? So thank you so much, BJ, and for our listeners, good night and good rolling.